If you've been watching my videos for a couple months, you will know that I have been in a major book slump since the beginning of June. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden it was like pulling teeth trying to get me to read for more than 5 minutes at a time. But I am so glad to say that, knock on wood, I am out of my book slump because I read 11 books in the month of October. The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. The Folk of the Air trilogy follows Jude, who is a human raised in the Fae realm, and for some reason she decides she also wants to rule the Fae realm. I'm not really sure why. Kind of don't really get a lot of her motivations behind a lot of her actions. Now, I will preface my review by saying that I read the first 2 books in this trilogy 2 years ago. So a lot of the qualms I had with this book could be because I waited so long to read this book. So that's on me. I will admit that. That being said, I did not enjoy this book at all. All of the characters have cotton for brains. They're making such dumb decisions. There's literally no thoughts going on behind their eyes. During any point of this book, there are a couple of riddles given to the female main character, and she like doesn't understand them. She doesn't understand what they mean. But as soon as they were said, I was like, it means this thing. And guess what? 100 pages later, I was right. I also feel like there was not a lot of character growth from the first book to this book. Like, of what I remember, I feel like the characters act in this way, in this book, the same as they did in the first book. Which is not great, considering the way that these characters act towards each other. This is also the 3rd book in the series, and I still couldn't get behind the romance. One of my biggest pet peeves in books is when you literally cannot see anything that shows that the characters care about each other. They say they love each other, but their actions prove otherwise. And this is definitely one of those books that has that kind of romance, which is just not fun for me to read. So I gave this a 2 stars. Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This book follows 2 authors who are competing for the opportunity to write the tell-all memoir of a woman whose family was like one of the most well-known families in the 20th century. They have to live in this super small town in Georgia and really get to know each other and get to know the story of this woman a lot throughout this book. I loved this book, okay? I was so intrigued the whole time. I binge read most of it all in one day. It's very reminiscent of 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the dual POV portion of this book, I actually was so intrigued with that storyline and I wanted to know more. And you know, I actually believed in the romance in this book, and for once in my life, I did not find myself wishing that the book was longer once we got to the end. I often am wanting more conclusion for the romance when I get to the end of books. Didn't feel that for this book, which is very impressive. I give this 5 stars. Accomplice to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I love the Assistant to the Villain series. They are so lighthearted and fun. However, I have noticed that the books are actually like growing in depth as we move through the series. And that is just so much fun for me. I love the character dynamics. The relationships between the characters are so much fun. They are so hilarious. The banter between everyone is top tier. Hannah Nicole Mayer really knows how to write the best banter you've ever read, in my opinion. Okay, it is my opinion. And I also really like this series because I feel like we were on the same adventure throughout all the books. I feel like a lot of newer fantasy series kind of have like smaller problems like in each book, and you kind of are left with a lot of your questions answered at the end, and they don't feel like one continuous story. However, this book, once one of your questions is answered, it opens the door for like 10 more questions. Not in a bad way, not in a she's writing plot holes way, in a very intriguing, I want to know more kind of way. Does that make sense? And I'm so sad that I have to wait 10 months for the next book in this series. 4 stars. Not Quite Dead Yet by Holly Jackson. On Halloween night, Jet is sitting in her family home when she gets whacked upside the head. She wakes up a couple of days later in the hospital, and the doctors tell her that she most likely only has a week to live. So what better way to spend your last days than solving your own murder? Now, this is Holly Jackson's first adult mystery thriller. She usually writes young adult. and I forgot that. So when I was starting to read this book, I was very confused, and some of the things that were being said, I was like, this doesn't really make any sense, till I remembered, oh right, this is an adult book, but that's what you get for going into books mostly blind. So Holly Jackson books always take me by surprise. I never guess the ending, and if I think I know who the perpetrator is, I could never guess how you get to the end of the book. And that to me constitutes a great mystery thriller, not being able to guess what happens until the end, but also when you find out who it is and what happened, so many other parts of the book make sense and it all ties together. 4.5 stars. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Violet was raised to be a scribe and to record history within the walls of the archives. However, when the time comes for Violet to start going to school, her mother decides that she needs to be a writer. A dragon rider, to be more specific. It's a place where many enter and few survive. This was my third time reading this book. I loved it. I had such a great time. And upon this reread, I found that it was less spicy than I remember it being, which usually it's the other way around. Usually, I feel like I remember books as being less spicy than they actually are, but not with this one, which didn't really make any sense to me. I did make an entire reading vlog of all my reactions to reading this book, so you should go check that out. 5 stars. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, my second Holly Jackson book of the month and my second time reading this book. Pip is a senior in high school and she decides for her final capstone project that she is going to reinvestigate a murder from 5 years ago because she thinks that the man who was accused of the murder is not guilty. I read this book at the end of 2022 and I gave it a 5 stars. Now I will say, upon the reread, I would no longer say that it is 5 stars. However, I will continue to say that it is one of my favorite books. I love the approach that Holly Jackson took for writing this book. It is a very unique way of writing it. It is told mostly through like transcripts of interviews that Pip conducts and the journal entries of her research for the project. It's a pretty unique way of writing a book and I very much enjoyed that style of writing. And I was still surprised at the ending because I had forgotten what happened at the end. 4.5 stars. The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now Avery Grams has had a tough life. She hasn't really known her father and her mother just recently passed away and now she lives with her stepsister, working multiple jobs to help make ends meet when she finds herself being told that Tobias Hawthorne, a billionaire, has passed away and left everything to her. Yet she's never met the man before. And so she has to move to Texas to live at his manor with all of his family that he has just disinherited to find out why it is that he left her absolutely everything. One of my all-time favorite movies is Knives Out, and this book mirrors that movie very closely, and so of course I'm gonna love this book. You can really tell when reading the book that Jennifer Lynn Barnes put a lot of thought and a lot of planning into all of the riddles and clues and the way that everything ties together, and that to me just makes the book that much more impressive. There is so much intrigue in this book and now I am itching to reread the rest of the series. 5 stars. The Selection Trilogy. This series follows America Singer, who lives in a society that is very divided by a caste system. It determines what job you can have and has a lot of social implications that go along with it. And the prince has just recently come of age and is now looking for a wife. And so they put on a competition for girls across the country to come to the palace and compete for the prince's attention, the prince's heart, to become the next queen. And America gets a bit strong-armed into applying for the competition, and it doesn't really go the way she anticipated. I was so excited to read these books. I read them before I started posting it on this channel, so I don't have a reading vlog for them, which is coming out this Saturday, so I won't say too much on my reaction of this book. I will say, are these books incredibly cheesy? Yes. Are they still a fun time? Yes, because it's like a dumpster fire that you can't look away from. It very much reads like a early 2010s book, but I had a good time, so. And then the last book that I read in October was Happily Ever After by Kira Cass. This is a collection of novellas that are very tangled up with the Selection series. The first novella was actually quite depressing, which I was not expecting. And the other novellas I wish they would have been longer. Yes, these novellas take place during the same time that the selection series does. However, there is actually very little overlap between the things that are described in the original selection trilogy and these novellas. So they were just as intriguing, just as interesting to read, and it didn't feel as repetitive as you might think it would be. I wish we could have gotten more from these characters' points of view. Were some parts a little unbelievable? Yes, but that doesn't make it any less fun to read. So yay, I read books. 11 of them, to be exact. So no more book slump, hopefully. I had some more 5-star books this month, which is fun, which is exciting. And I cannot wait to see what I read in November. So that is all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up to let me know that you enjoy this type of content. Comment down below your favorite book that you read in October, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content in the future. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you guys next time.